Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you're returning, thank you as always for being here. You are the best. I have some DIYs for Christmas on a budget, so let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. For this project, I have one of these domes from the Dollar Tree, and this is from Hobby Lobby. It was actually a pack of 6 of these little Christmas trees, originally $3.99, but I'd gotten it at like 60 or 70% off, so really good deal. And then this garland, for lack of a better term, is also from the Hobby Lobby, and I worked it out to be less expensive than Dollar Tree. So I am using a fern chalk paint, and I'm going to, no, not fern, moss. This was moss, sorry. And I'm going to give my little tree a coat. You're not really going to see this, but it's just in case I have any gaps with the garland a little later. So I set that aside to dry, and I'm just prepping my little dome cloche, I guess is what this is actually called. Got that ready. And I'm going to treat the bottom of it because I want it to look like bark. I actually think it turned out pretty well. You'll have to let me know what you think as I get through this, but I'm using just plain old paper towel, and as you can see, I'm kind of tearing it up and then crinkling it up and just making sure that I have enough that it is going to be able to cover all the way around the base of this. So I've got the 4 different sheets. Ultimately, I only needed 3 of them, but I just had it all prepped because I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to go once I started getting it dipped in the Mod Podge. So you could use school glue for this. It doesn't have to be Mod Podge, but I decided it was a little bit too messy for my taste as far as just doing it with my bare hands. So I grabbed out my little gloves. And I am going to just coat it. I'm literally just dipping it in the Mod Podge, giving it a good coat and making sure that it is completely saturated, but then I don't want it dripping. So I was just kind of making sure that it was completely covered, but I was squeezing off any excess. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then I'm really just gathering it up around. I'm working this on parchment paper so that I will have a good shot at getting it to lift off afterwards. I'll be honest, it did even stick to my parchment paper a little bit, so I had to be real careful when I pulled it away, especially because I was impatient and pulled it away before it was completely dry, trying to hurry up the process. But while that was drying, I went ahead and started working on my tree. It looks like it's different colors here. It's just because my paint wasn't fully mixed when I shook it up. And so when I dipped my paintbrush back in to do the top, it had a slightly different color than the bottom. But again, this is really just to make sure that if there are any little gaps in the coverage of the garland, that you're not seeing white shining through. So it's really not going to be noticeable. I did realize after I started working from the bottom up here that I should have started at the top. It would have just made it a little bit easier to work with this because and I wouldn't have needed quite as much hot glue. Reason being that working from the bottom to the top, it's automatically going to want to slide down because it narrows, versus working from the top to bottom, it's not going to slide down as the cone gets larger, if that makes sense. So if I had to do it again, I would start at the top and work my way down. So that would be my recommendation if you decide to do something like this. So got myself all the way worked to the very top. I'm going to trim off, leaving about 1 inch. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of out of camera here, but I kind of poked the point down into the tippy top so that it's not sticking out, and it kind of secured it. All right, now I have little fairy lights. These have been in my stash for a while. I'd gotten a pack of, I don't know, it was maybe 12 or 24 from Amazon. I think I've got them in my Amazon store if you want to check that out. And this, again, was something else I realized later, that it might have been better if I'd started at the bottom. And even better yet, what I wish I had done is to put a hole in the base of the cloche that I could have worked all of my fairy lights through and come up from the bottom, wrapped it around the tree, and then I could have had the little battery pack underneath the cloche base. There's plenty of room under there. Again, if I had to do it again, that's the way I would do it. I would go from the bottom so that the little battery pack is on the bottom and work the lights up through a little hole and then work them around the tree. So best laid plans, right? But at any rate, this is mostly dry now. Not entirely dry, but I needed to keep moving with this project. So I went ahead and went for it. And I'm using my, I think this is called Java chalk paint. It's just a chocolate brown color of my chalk paint, and I'm going to cover the entire base. So just giving it a good coat. I'm using a chip brush because I figured it might help me get in some of those nooks and crannies, just being that the brush is all different kind of lengths there. And then I can light up my tree. Once this is all dry, this is completely dry at this point, and put my cloche on, and there it is. I think it's super sweet, but let me know what you think of this. DIY number 2. Okay, this is some scrap fabric that I've had in my stash. I think that might be linen, but you can use whatever you want. And then that is a bath mat from the Dollar Tree. So I am just going to try and figure out what size of the fabric I want. I'm going to be making a pillow. So I am just going to kind of figure it out by folding it. I want it to be, is oblong the right word? I don't know if that's the right word. I want it to be like a rectangle. I'm not looking for a square on this one. I want it to be longer, or wider, I should say, than it is tall. So I kind of got it to a place where I wanted it and folded over the fabric, as you can see, and I'm just cutting along that fold, holding it down firm, and that helps me get a straight line on my cut. And the fabric had been folded in half, so I'm just cutting that as well because I only want to be dealing with one piece of the fabric for right now. So next comes the bath mat, and I am going to be cutting out Christmas tree shapes in my bath mat. So to do that, I grabbed a piece of parchment paper. You can see this is something that I already used with something else, so it just had some glue on it that was all dried, so no harm in what I'm trying to do here. And just gonna try and draw out in pencil a basic shape of a Christmas tree. Now, I like things to be symmetrical, so we are going to be doing a little something more with this because that clearly is not symmetrical. So I folded it in half along the middle of the tree that I just drew. And it wasn't completely far off, but I am just gonna go ahead and draw it again from the outside here, tracing a little bit or just using those lines that I had already created as a bit of a guideline, not following them exactly, as you can see. And then I cut it out. So that's along the crease line, right? So when I open this up, it's going to be symmetrical, and now I have a pattern. And I'm going to go ahead and pin my pattern to the Dollar Tree bath mat. And once I've got that all pinned, I will be able to cut it out. And I'm going to be making 3 of these. I thought about cutting out 3 patterns and just doing them all at once. And then I was like, no, you know what? I'm just going to go with the one pattern that I created. I'll cut one out. I'll pin it to the mat again, cut it out. And I just did that 3 times. So you could create 3 patterns and do them all at once if you'd like. Or you can do what I did and just use the one pattern 3 times. So once I had that all done, here I've got my 3 trees. I'm going to place them on my fabric, just lining them up. I was trying to decide if I wanted to kind of make them at different heights, but I ultimately decided I wanted them to all be the same height on my fabric. I'm going to go ahead and pin all of those down, and then I'm going to be using my sewing machine to literally just sew these right over top, and I'm going right over top. I did think that maybe I would be able to see the white thread just because of what this is, but I was shocked that you can't even see where I sewed it. I guess because it's so shaggy, there was no sign that it had been sewn. So that was kind of neat. But once I have them all on there, I'm going to go ahead and cover them with the second piece of fabric, and I'm going to pin this all down. So essentially it's going to be inside out right now. And we are going to sew it. You can see I've made 2 pins on either side of the area where I want to remind myself to leave it open, because I'm going to need to be able to flip it right side out and stuff it. So again, just going to start at the double pins and work my way all the way around. I left about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. And now I'm going to go ahead and flip it right side out, making sure that I get all of the corners poked out, and then it'll be ready to stuff. This is such an easy thing to do. Even if you're just a basic sewer, it's such a simple project, and you can make so many different cute pillows. It's just, I really enjoy it, and it's quick, and I think it's fun. So now I've got my polyfill. I'm going to go ahead and stuff this nice and full, working the polyfill into each of the corners. So I'll start in each corner, and then I'll fill in the middle. And once I have it all stuffed, I'll be ready to sew up the bottom there. But I'm just going to make sure that I get it nice and full, because over time the polyfill will kind of flatten out a little bit. So I want to just make sure that that I put a sufficient amount in there. I mean, I don't want to overdo it, but I want to make sure that it's definitely nice and full, and there aren't any kind of holes, so to speak. So now I'm just going to kind of pinch the seam together and try and keep it in line with the part that had already been sewn, and I'm pinning it. I'm starting on either side and then working my way into the middle. And once I had that done, I'm actually going to use, you probably can't even see it here because it is a clear thread. If you think of fishing line, it's kind of like that, but this actually is a thread for sewing. And I'm just going to sew up the bottom with a tiny little simple stitch, just sewing both sides together. And that's going to finish off this little pillow. It's, again, such an easy project, something you can do in just an hour or two. You can put any kind of design on there. And for those little trees, you could also dye them green if you wanted to. There are so many different options for this, but I think it's adorable. Let me know what you think. DIY number 3. Okay, this is from the Dollar Tree as well. Both of these items, so the vase and then the little snowman not gift baggies, they're like treat bags. And it is sufficiently large that it will completely cover, and then some, my glass vase, the circumference anyway, not the height, but it kind of trumpets out, so I wasn't planning on going all the way to the top of this anyway. So as you can see, it is going to be more than sufficient to go all the way around, and so I'm going to have to trim this up a little bit. I just kind of used my my fingers, I pinched it on either side just to try and figure out exactly where I was going to need to trim it, and went ahead and cut that down. You could certainly do measurements if you would like. It's not really my style. I tend to just kind of go with it, and yeah, I'm not exactly exact. So now I'm gonna figure out where I need to trim off the top. Because actually, I guess it does go all the way up, but because it it flares out, it will not allow my bag to lay completely flat. So I do want to just trim that off so that I don't have to deal with the flare, so to speak. So I'm going to fold that over and crease it. It actually surprisingly it was very easy to crease. And I'm going to do that at the bottom as well, just so that I make sure that my design is the way that I want it. Now, if you have a vase that is completely just a cylinder and doesn't flare at the top, you could certainly take this all the way up, and it might actually be a cleaner look. I did kind of mess up on this, I will readily admit. If I had to do it over again, and I'll tell you in a second what I would have done differently, but I definitely would have done this a little bit differently. But I'm going to go ahead and continue to get all of my pieces cut down to where I need them so that they are going to be what I want them to be on the vase, which I'm actually turning into a candle holder. And as you could probably see, I was matching up the designs because I want them to be the same as you look around the circumference of it. I want them to be the same height. I don't want them to look like they're crooked or whatever. So that was the reason for keeping them together and lining up the image before I cut them down again. So just making sure that they're the way that they need to be. And now I've got my Mod Podge. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a good coat on the one side. And I decided that I wanted the entire glass area to have the Mod Podge on it. I actually kind of like the way that the glass looks after it's been treated with Mod Podge. It kind of reminds me of old glass. So at any rate, this is where I messed up. I'm gonna say I messed up. If I had to do it again, I would wait until it was almost completely dry and just be a little tacky, and then put this down. Reason being, this is plastic, and we all know what happens when you wrap something in plastic. It does not dry. So the underside of this, where I have got the plastic, is probably not going to dry, or it is going to take a very long time before it's completely dried out. So yeah, if I had to do it again, I would wait until it's almost completely dry, and then I would apply it and maybe heat it somehow. I would just have to be very careful not to melt the plastic, obviously, but so here you can see it's completely dry on the outside, the inside, not so much. But I'm going to go ahead and use some of my Kirkland ribbon around the top edge and just create a very flat bow. I don't even know what you would call it other than a flat bow. It's not going to have tails on it or anything, but I'm going to have it kind of off to the side. So trying to figure out how much ribbon I need here for the band around the top. I want to make sure it's nice and tight. I did use a little hot glue eventually to secure it in place, but I also am folding over the edges so that they are not visible from the inside of the vase. So the one that's going to be underneath, I folded it up and out, so it looks like a clean edge from the inside of the vase. And then the one on the outside, I folded it down and over. So just as clean as possible, right? Hopefully that made sense. So here I'm going to create my little bow. I'm basically making a little loop, and then I'm going to loop it back on itself, and then I'm going to make another loop. So yeah, that's really all it is. So it's basically one large loop with a smaller loop on top of it. And I just did that by folding the ribbon. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue it together. I'm going to fasten that right there in the middle. Now I thought that the hot glue would go through the ribbon sufficiently that I wasn't going to have to keep adding glue layer over layer, but turns out that it didn't really do that. So I ended up having to go back in with more glue for each of the different layers, and you'll see that in a second. Here I'm just trying to pop up the little center part because I was pressing down on all of the glue and I was flattening out my middle part of my bow. But here I'm coming in more glue, just making sure that it's creating the bow. Of course, I'm pressing down on it again, trying to get my finger in there to press down, but we got it done. So I think this is super sweet. You'll have to let me know what you think. But again, if I had to do it over, I would wait until that Mod Podge was drier on the inside, on the glass surface, before I put down the plastic sheet. But let me know what you think. And now it's time for a shout out timeout. Cute, Kathy. This must have taken quite some time. It's adorable. Thank you for sharing. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, just send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 4. All right, I have a couple of little candles from the Dollar Tree, and then I also have their version of the vinyl. They actually do call it vinyl paper. It's super thin. I had intended when I first got it to try it out on my Cricut, and then I saw other people using it and giving it reviews, and I was a little afraid I was going to mess up my machine, so I have opted to use it in other ways. So for this particular exercise, I am going to be cutting it into strips, and I'm kind of getting it angled on my candle. So trying to figure out exactly how to cut it so that it's going to be at an angle and not hanging over the candle. And once I figured that out and had it at the angle that I wanted it, I went ahead and cut down the other pieces to get them all the same length. I did find that I was able to trim it up in instances where I somehow managed to cut it a little bit too long, or I don't know, maybe the candle wasn't completely even all the way around. So there might have been some areas where it was a little shorter versus longer. Entirely possible. So, but I'd rather it be too long than too short, because I can always take some more off. I can't put it back on once it's off. So I'm spacing these around the candle about, so I put 4 of them down, so about quarter way around, and then I went back in and I just decided it looked like it needed more. So I went back and I added another 4 in between the original 4, and so doing it that way actually made it easier because I was able to space them out more evenly just by centering that last round. But that's it. Super simple and super festive candles. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the projects, remember to give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thanks so much for watching, and take good care. Bye.